I am Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports, and we have a lot of news and rumors to discuss here surrounding the Miami Dolphins. And some of it will go with NFL free agency, some of it will be in the NFL draft. We'll go through three kind of questions here on the show. We'll talk about trading up in the 2025 NFL draft. We'll talking about signing veteran left guard Brandon Scherff, and then we'll also discuss re-signing Calais Campbell, who was just massive last year for the Miami Dolphins. But we're going to start with trading up in the NFL draft. And we're going to go back to our Dolphins rumors meters. Remember, there are four kind of fins here. 4 is it's absolutely going to happen, should happen. 1 is very, very little, and then 0 is nothing, obviously. But when it comes to trading up in the 2025 NFL draft, I'm going to give it 2 fins, which means people are talking. It's not the most unlikely scenario, but it's also not the most common thing to happen either. Because when you think of what Miami has in the NFL draft, they have a lot to work with at their disposal. They have 10 NFL draft picks. That's a lot. 3 in the 7th, 2 in the 5th, 2 in the 4th, and then 1 in each first 3 rounds. And when I'm talking about trading up in the NFL draft, I'm actually not discussing moving up from pick 13 to potentially move up inside the top 10. I'm actually referring to maybe utilizing some of these day 3 picks in that 3rd round pick to move up from 48th overall and get into the 1st round to have a second selection. Because my idea is this. The Dolphins have a lot of holes to fill at left guard, safety, cornerback, and corner as well. But the thing is, with all those picks, if they really like a prospect, why wouldn't they think about potentially moving up back into the 1st round? Because remember, the difference between a 1st-round pick and a 2nd-round pick is pretty large. That 1st-round pick, it's a 5th-year option attached to their contract, which means you can have them, if they're really good, on 5 years of team control at a relatively cheap price before that extension would kick in. And you saw it with Javon Holland. Like, if Javon Holland was a 1st-round pick rather than a 2nd-round pick, he'd probably still be on Miami because he would have been given that 5th-year option, just like Jalen Phillips has that 5th-year option this season, because if he was a 2nd-round pick, he probably would not have been extended to this point. So that is very important. I could see Miami trading up, and we'll look at what that cost could be and some of the prospects I would trade up for. But help us out here. Spread the word of Dolphins Today. Share today's video. It'd be greatly appreciated to spread our content across the internet, and specifically Twitter/X. All you got to do is click the share button, select Twitter/X icon, click post to Twitter/X. And if you do that and post it on Twitter, tag me at Nic_Rohloff. I'll give you a like and a retweet. All right, so when you look at what trading up in the NFL draft could actually look like, I think this is a perfect example. And every year, the draft chart gets updated in terms of what pick has each individual value, depending on the draft class and everything in between. Well, when you look at the value chart, what it would likely require for the Dolphins to trade up into the late 1st round, and I just use the Lions, for example, at pick number 28. The Dolphins move up from 48 in the 2nd round to get that extra 1st-round pick. All it would require to match the value of that 1st-round pick is sending your 3rd-round pick, number 98 overall, and a 2026 3rd-round pick. So you burn a pick next year. Yeah, I know that would stink, but you're only burning 1 pick extra in this draft to move up 20 spots to get a player that you could really like and have him on that 5th-year option. I would seriously consider that. Now, you might ask what prospects would I would be willing to do that for. These are the 5 that come to Nate right away. And I will say this right now. I am not guaranteeing that these 5 players will go in the 1st round. I'm not guaranteeing these players will even be available past pick 20. Because if we're going to be honest, there's a world where all 5 of these guys are not even available in the earlier mid-20s. But there is a chance that some of these guys might slip. The 5 prospects I'm looking at: Nick Rohloff from South Carolina, Malachi Starks from Georgia, Derek Harmon and Kenneth Grant on the defensive line from Oregon and Michigan. And then on the offensive line, I'd look at Gray Zabel, the interior offensive lineman from North Dakota State. I think these 5 guys are at least getting a small chance or a middle chance to get in that 25 to 28 range. Now, they could go high. They could not. I've seen mock drafts have them go as high as 13, 15. I've seen them go maybe not even in the 1st round. I think I saw either Daniel Jeremiah or I think it might have been Mel Kiper have Malachi Starks fall out of the 1st round. My point is, if one of these 5 are on the board at 28, I would personally trade up and go up and get a guy that could be a key contributor on this football team. So let me know your thoughts. If this is what it would cost you to trade up from pick 48 to get an extra first rounder, would you do it? Type Y for yes or type N for no. Let me know your thoughts on it. This is what it would potentially cost. It might cost more, it might cost less, but this is probably where it would be around. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. All right, we're going to transition from the NFL draft to NFL free agency. One of the guys that I have talked about quite a bit about being a free agent target for Miami, signed Brandon Scherff, the veteran from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, I'm giving it 3 fins, which means we should really be starting to look into this because to me, the last piece of the offense, I'm not talking offensive line, I'm talking the entire offense, is the starting left guard spot. Your quarterback position is set with Tua and Zach Wilson as your 1-2. Your running backs are set with Madison, Jalen Wright, and Achane. Your wide receivers are set. Hill, Waddle, Westbrook-Ikini, Malik Washington. Your tight ends are probably good with Pharaoh Brown, Julian Hill, and Jonnu Smith. And your offensive line is basically done. You've got your right tackle. You've got your left tackle. You got your center. You signed one of the 2 offensive guards required. You just need that other interior offensive lineman. And I want to finish that offensive line. I mentioned it. Look at the group you have here. Now, you could have different opinions on this, on if this is a good offensive line or not, but this is set. Patrick Paul's going to be your left tackle unless Armstead comes back, and then now you have to make a decision on what you're doing with the rest of this offensive line. But Aaron Brewer's at center, James Daniels going to be one of your guard spots, and Austin Jackson will be back at right tackle. So if you were to sign Brandon Scherff and plug him in at left guard, you would now have your entire offensive line depth chart, at least your starting 5, done going into training camp. So barring injury, you would just need to maybe add some depth and maybe a long-term projected play, since Scherff would likely be a 1-year deal, in the NFL draft. That would be pretty ideal if you're asking me. And we'll talk more about Scherff here as a player specifically in just a second. But we are sponsored by Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports platform out there. I play Prize Picks every single day. All you do is pick more or less on 2 or more player stat projections, and you can win up to 1,000 times your cash right now. And with baseball season getting underway, you can take advantage of combining across different sports, whether it's baseball, whether it's basketball. It does not matter. The postseason's approaching as well. There's college basketball going on right now. You can play in so many different ways, which is why I like Prize Picks so much. You can even include hockey, esports, and much more. And I have an entry for Prize Picks when it comes to baseball. I'm looking at opening day this Thursday. More than Zach Wheeler, 6 strikeouts. More than Jackson Churio, 1.5 hits, runs, and RBI. And then more than 6.5 strikeouts for Garrett Crochet. 3-player entry here. That's just one example of how you can play. But you could also combine these picks with some college basketball picks as the Sweet 16 gets underway on Thursday. Either way, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, as we look at Brandon Scherff more as a free agent target for Miami, he had a relatively solid season last year. He's an experienced guy, graded out pretty well in the pass blocking game. There is questions about how mobile he would be able to be in that Mike McDaniel scheme, which requires you to be able to get to the perimeter, get to the second level in these kind of zone end-arounds and the halfback tosses. But he was a pretty solid pass blocker last year. You saw it. Allowed no sacks, only had 2 penalties on him, 1 QB hit, was graded out in the mid-70s. So if you're looking at an offensive lineman that would help protect Tua Tagovailoa, well, Brandon Scherff would be a pretty good option to plug in at left guard. And this goes for not just Scherff, but if you want to sign another veteran left guard out there that could play like Shaq Mason, like Will Hernandez, Dalton Reisner, I want a veteran at left guard. Because even though I would be very happy with Will Campbell in the first round, or if they had a Gray Zabel in the late first or early second, or a Tyler Booker as well, I would like that. But the truth is, Patrick Paul, who is your second-round pick last year, will be getting his first starting experience as a full-time left tackle this year. And if you want to have a better, more consistent offensive line, a veteran presence at left guard would ease my concern quite a bit. Because if you're having first-year starter Patrick Paul at left tackle, a rookie left guard, well, that left side of the offensive line could get absolutely bullied. But you plug in a veteran in between Paul and Aaron Brewer, you already have your right guard, right tackle combination set. I would feel much better about that left side and feel very confident about this offensive line, if we're going to be honest, heading into the season so we could protect Tua and run the ball more effectively up the middle. And I'll tell you what, folks, if the Dolphins ultimately sign Brandon Scherff or any other player in NFL free agency, we will have you covered with a video. We are 50 subscribers away from 68,300. Can we get there on today's episode? It would be greatly appreciated. Daily content, hit that sub button. All right, last rumor we're going to talk about today. Could the Dolphins re-sign Calais Campbell? This is a slam dunk. This is for Fins, which means it absolutely should be something the Miami Dolphins do. Because Calais Campbell, who was a late signing last year, if you remember, came super, super late after the NFL draft. Like, it came in May, I believe. He was one of your best players on the defense last season. And if we're going to talk about the number one priority from now until the NFL draft, I think it's re-signing Calais Campbell. I really do. Because he played in all 17 games for you last season. He was a mainstay, a great locker room presence as well. And this defensive line room is just so, belittled, if you will. They finally signed Benito Jones back to be that nose tackle on the defensive line, but you need that consistent defensive lineman that can work opposite to Zach Sealer. It was Calais Campbell last season. I would like it to be Calais Campbell again. You look at the numbers. This guy's 36, 37 years old, still putting up 5 sacks, 12 TFLs, getting after the quarterback, and we know how big he is, 6'6", so when he puts those paws up, he gets his hands on some of those passes at the line of scrimmage as well. Calais Campbell was so good last year. He showed no sign of descent. He showed no sign of falling off. I really like Calais Campbell. I like his leadership in the locker room as well. To me, if Calais Campbell is not retiring, Chris Grier should do everything in his power to ensure he is playing in a Dolphins uniform next season. And I think every Dolphins fan could agree with that. So if Calais doesn't retire, please re-sign him. So what say you? Are you agreeing with me? Do you feel this strongly about bringing back Calais Campbell? If you do, type S for sign. If you are disagreeing with me and typing those P for passes, well, that's fine too. That's why we like to ask you guys these questions. All right, to round out the conversation on Calais Campbell, if you re-sign him, it just gives you a more laxed mentality heading into the NFL draft. Seriously. Because right now, we talk about corner, safety, defensive line, offensive line in such a big way. Now, who the Dolphins draft at pick 13, pick 48, is all up to who's on the board, and I would go best player available on each of those 4 individual positions when you're picking at 13 and 48. But if you re-sign Calais Campbell, it would provide you a more laxed approach where you could maybe go best player available at defensive back and offensive line, and then look to go defensive line at pick 48 or pick 98. I think that would be much better suited for this Dolphins football team because there's a deep defensive line class. You can go TJ Sanders from South Carolina, Darius Alexander from Toledo in the second round, potentially if they consider and are available at that spot. It would not hamstring you to where you should draft one in the first round. Bring back Calais Campbell to me. Just got to happen. And like I said earlier, there's no better options out there. All of them are gone. I'm trying to think off the top of the head here about who I would rather have on this defensive line in free agency. Outside of Calais Campbell, I can't do it. I just seriously think he is head and shoulders above everybody else that is still a free agent on the defensive line. I think he's still mulling if he's retiring or not. So if he doesn't retire, Calais, please return to Miami. And if Calais Campbell does re-sign with the Miami Dolphins, we will make a video about that, and you'll probably see a very happy Nic Rohloff, and he'll be smiling this entire video. So hopefully that ultimately comes to fruition. But like I say, make sure you're subscribed because when these things happen, when the Dolphins make moves, we have you covered.